Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to another episode of What's Up, Doc. I'm your host, Dr. Aalia Al-Barwani, and I am a board-certified family physician. My show, What's Up, Doc, is a production of Muslim Network TV, the only Muslim-focused network broadcasting in North America. You can watch Muslim Network TV on Fire TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, and on Galaxy 19. You can also watch us streaming nearly every day on our website at muslimnetwork.tv and on our YouTube page at youtube.com/Muslim Network TV. Today we have another important episode, and we're going to be talking about the act of grieving or the process of grieving. With over 2 million people who have died worldwide from the COVID-19 pandemic and over 423,000 as of last count in the United States alone, a lot of families and loved ones are grieving. Joining us in that discussion is Dr. Jason Branch. Dr. Branch is a licensed professional counselor for the states of New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Alabama, and Georgia. Dr. Branch has more than 15 years of experience in the mental health and counseling profession and has worked in community agency and mental health centers, city government, and substance abuse treatment facilities. Dr. Branch has maintained a clinical private practice since 2010 that focuses on adults, adolescents, couples, and families. Dr. Branch currently engages in professional and scholarly work focused on African American male experiences, mentoring multicultural issues, and increasing the practice of self-care for helping professionals. He's also a second-time guest on our show, and we're so excited to have you. Welcome back, Dr. Branch.
Thank you. It's good to be back. Good to see you again.
Of course. You know, we couldn't just do one episode with you. We had such a great first episode talking about how important mental health is during these times more than ever. And today I want to bring you back to talk about a more sobering topic, which is the process of grieving. And a lot of families have lost loved ones, friends, etc. And it's just a very hard time for everybody, but for those who have lost loved ones, that even more so. So let's talk about what grieving is and what grieving isn't. And let's start with maybe defining what grief is.
Okay. Grief is an intense emotional response to a loss. Typically, when we think grief, we think death. It's the response to death. But honestly, grief relates to any loss. That could be a loss of a relationship, loss of a job, loss of my routine, my structure, my home. It could be the loss of anything. And especially with the pandemic that's going on, a lot of us has lost a lot of different things. So that grief can look a lot of different ways for many of us. And it's not just related to death, but it could be multiple things that we may have lost because of the pandemic.
That's a great description and a great way to start, because as you mentioned, grief doesn't only pertain to the death of someone. And that's a really important distinction to make, because as I mentioned before, I also go to therapy, and with the loss of a relationship or the ending of a relationship, you know, my counselor said that I'm grieving, and the idea was just so foreign to me. I'm like, well, nobody died, but she said it was the death of a relationship. And so we go through similar stages as when we've lost an important relationship in our life, or as you said, a job, et cetera. So I love that you kind of piece that out for us and explain that it's not just limited to one area of your life. Now, along those lines, and I think you've kind of already answered this, is mourning is not the same as grieving. Let's talk a little bit about that. What makes the two different?
Excellent question. And I think a lot of times we put the two together. We put grief and mourning together. But the reality is they are different. Grief is what you think. And this is according to Dr. Alan Wolfelt. He said, grief is what you think and what you feel on the inside, and mourning is when you express that grief outside of yourself. So mourning is grief inside out. So grief is what we feel inside. Mourning is what we feel outside. So mourning is actually the act of grieving. So when I'm mourning, it could be me wearing black, me crying, me having a bad moment or wanting to get away. That's me mourning. The grief is that feeling that I have that's internal. So when you think grief, think internal, my feelings, what's inside. When you think mourning, think external. What am I doing? How am I displaying that I'm upset or grieving?
Absolutely. And so the importance, I love that you said it's grieving inside. How did you phrase it again? Because I love the way you just said
it. Grief is what you think and feel on the inside. Mourning is what you express with grief on the outside.
Mourning is grief inside out. I've put that on a t-shirt.
Yes, that's good. That was a quote
I like that
by
a lot.
Alan Wolfelt. It's not mine, so I can't take
Okay.
But it hits home. It explains it, makes it simple. And I feel as though when we have an understanding about grief and mourning, then we're going to respond. But now it's like, I know how I'm responding, or I know that it's okay to respond this way. This is normal. This is a part of us as human beings and how we grieve and how we mourn.
Absolutely. And we'll get into a little bit more about the process of grieving for sure. But with mourning, as you said, it's very, very personal, whether it's wearing black, crying, you know, some people cook more than usual. Some people go into isolation, and that can last. In your experience, how long does mourning usually last?
So it's subjective. Mourning and grief is subjective. So to me, there isn't a timeline. That timeline doesn't exist. It's individualized. It depends on the person. For some people, it may be a month, it may be several months, it may be years, it may be several years. For some, it never ends, where I'm always grieving because I'm reminiscing, I'm connecting the dots, or I'm triggered by something that reminds me of that loved one, or triggered by, I don't have a job anymore, I don't go to an office anymore, I'm having Zoom calls. I might be triggered by that. Or triggered from that past relationship. Anytime I go to Disney World or to Burger King, I'm remembering that last relationship where that was the last time we went to that certain place. So to me, there's no timeline. It doesn't end, and it's very subjective.
I love that. And let's talk about the difference between different kinds of grief, because as I've read, there is anticipatory grief, there is traumatic grief. What's the difference? What are they talking about with respect to that?
Okay, so anticipatory grief is us expecting the grief to happen. An example of that, it could be someone who is taking care of a parent. You know, their parent is living at home with them. They may be in hospice, and it's that expectation that this person may pass at any moment, at any time, and I'm anticipating that grief. So I'm grieving even though this person is alive, because I'm anticipating when they pass. So that's anticipatory grief.
So, and just to be clear, I mean, we're all going to die, right? Hopefully not just this minute. Absolutely. But when you specifically say that, are you referring to somebody who is chronically ill and they're in hospice? You said, you know, you can see the end is near. Is that what you mean? More than this, just this general sense that you're older, you're going to die soon.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it could be a chronic illness. It could also be us with what's going on with the coronavirus, that this could happen to me. This could happen to a family member. And I'm anticipating the grief of that loss. So I don't want anybody to think it's just one dimensional, as one way. It's several different ways that we can experience anticipatory grief. Also with ourselves, the possibility of me contracting coronavirus and passing away, like I can have grief about that, even though it hasn't happened. And that's how powerful our minds are. We can go to that place and really get caught up in, oh my God, what if this happens? How am I going to respond? How am I going to react? And our body can have a response to what we think, even if it's not happening in real time.
Wow. Can you give me some examples of what, okay, so you said that our bodies can have a response. We're thinking these thoughts. What are some of the things that our body can sometimes do that would, be in response to that kind of thinking? Because sometimes I feel like we're unconscious of our thoughts. Do you know what I mean? We're experiencing things, and it's not until we take a minute and we kind of like check in with ourselves, do we really understand where our thoughts are going? So what are some of the signs that people can really be like, wait a minute, do I have that?
Yes. The first thing I would say is self-checking. How am I feeling? Am I feeling tense? Am I, what is my body posture saying? Am I feeling overwhelmed? Am I stressed? Am I clenching my fist? Am I clenching my mouth? What am I watching on television? Does it affect me? I can just have crying spells, depression, anxiety. I can feel these things and not know they're related to what I anticipate happening, even if it's not happening. So for many of us, we are experiencing directly or indirectly the results of the pandemic. Whether it affects someone in my home or a family member, I may start to feel as though this is happening right now, or it's more extreme than what it really is. So the reality is, a lot of times we don't know. So if I don't know information, I'm going to create it. And we're so great at creating stories, especially stories that hurt us.
Yeah.
So we may feel different things that's happening because in our minds, we've created this reality, even if it's not real.
Wow. I feel like I have to take a second just to absorb that. That is so profound.
That's us as human beings. That's us all day long, because we're powerful in our thoughts and our beliefs. So if I can obsess about the possibility, the threat, the possible loss of my life or family member because of what's going on in the media, what's going on within our society, it could affect us directly and indirectly. So that self-check, let me check me, what's going on with me, how do I feel, to me is the first step of bringing your awareness to what's going on right now, which is, I think I may have talked about this in the first episode of the first time I was on, was what if versus what is. And when we get more caught up in what if, we create these scenarios versus what is what's in front of us, what's tangible, what's real. And what's in front of us, what's tangible is what's real. I'm safe, I'm healthy, I'm okay. Nothing has happened. What if is, oh my God, I could contract corona, I could lose my job, I can lose my wife, I could lose my life. That's what brings us into that panic. So to me, a suggestion, not only body checking, let me be mindful of what's going on right now. What can I control or change today? And how can I practice more mindfulness of being present in today?
Absolutely. I love that. So being present in today, living in the now and not in the what if, because I mean, you can't control it anyway. So
we can't, but we try. We're good.
We try so hard.
We do. We're great at it. We're great at it because we've been doing it probably all of our lives.
Exactly. I love that. Dr. Branch. Okay. And so what is traumatic grief?
Okay. So traumatic grief is the experience of grief that does not go away. This is when I begin to obsess about grief. So it could be a loss. It could be the possibility of a loss where I can't get out of this feeling, out of this depression. I'm obsessing about death. I'm obsessing about my own death. And this does not go away. So every single day I wake up and I feel this grief, this loss. And it's usually beyond the normal scope of guilt, of grief. So if it's beyond normal, I'm not able to control it. Therefore, it may be some mental health concerns related to traumatic grief. So traumatic grief is grief times 1,000 that I'm dealing with. So it doesn't happen to everyone. Is not a normal, response. But this is what happens where I'm not able to get any control or any relief from my grief.
I understand. And so would you phrase it as essentially if it's grief that is affecting your ability to function and take care of yourself, was that a good way to kind of to encapsulate it so that people can understand, okay, this is out of control now because I'm not able to do these things for myself anymore?
Absolutely. Okay. I love the way you take what I have. I love that.
Well, that's how I process things, and so I'm processing aloud, essentially.
I love it. It hits the nail on the head, and that definitely explains it. I'm not able to do my normal functioning because I'm obsessing about grief of loss or death.
Absolutely. Gosh. Okay. So I hope this is really helpful to our audience in order to help them break down some of the definitions and understand like when to get help, because it sounds like when you are having that traumatic grief, it's, you said, not the normal experience of grief, and that it is important to seek help because there may be an underlying mental disorder. So I like that we're explaining that that's not normal part. So now that we've explained what's not normal, what we need to be kind of aware of, let's talk about what is the normal process of grief. Now, would you say that it is a process as opposed to something that you get through? Because I hear this a lot, right? Is that you're going through, or you're trying to get over versus getting over grief is the other thing that I've heard. And so would you agree that it's a process?
Yes, absolutely. And I don't think anyone ever gets over grief. How do I get over what I'm feeling? I can't. So to me, it's a process, and it's an individualized process. Everybody grieves differently. How we grieve, when we grieve, what does it look like? It's different. It's just one-stop shop or one way of how we're supposed to grieve. And to me, however you decide to grieve, and all of us grieve in different ways. It's being able to accept how you grieve and the way you grieve. And that's hard for a lot of people because it's the idea of, in order for me to grieve, I have to grieve in this way. In order for me to be done with grief, it has to end. And to me, sometimes this is just a part of our a journey and a part of our life, that grief is just a system of us as human beings. And it happens because all of us experience loss in some kind of way throughout our lives.
Exactly. I want us to get into the different stages, because it is a process and there are different stages that people can go back and forth between. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break. And we'll be back in a few minutes. You're watching What's Up Doc on Muslim Network TV, and we'll be back after this short break.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Adam. You remember me? I appeared in so many episodes that Sound Vision has put on the market. No matter what. Hey, what's happening? Hey, oh, sorry. Lockdown is what it is. Well, continuing here. In this lockdown, Sound Vision never stops thinking about you, the viewer. We'll have to get back into production again, online and inline. Everybody in their own space, even me. Although I'm stuck with Lanisa.
Salam! Salam!
I know, you were shocked too. Well, let me continue. This is what I was going to say. Salam! 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 Cut! Finally, I get my own screen time again. Thank God. And so we invested in new equipment to bring you even better production with new songs and new singers and animations. Well, here are a few clips. And Sound Vision has brought all this into your home, making Islamic values and teachings easy. And if you know me, Adam, a multi-talented actor, well, sometimes I'm an actor and the reporter and the... Oh, that's enough. Let's move on to the next section. Well, you can watch these new episodes on our new app at www.adamsworldapp.com. We have previews happening every day on Muslim Network TV. Sound Vision has been serving generations, moving and changing with the times. We are all faithfully connected. That is a huge blessing. Your donation helps keep these programs available now and into the future. We take this job of helping tomorrow's Muslims today seriously, and you should too. Today, we need your help. Children absorb and learn from everything they encounter. make that wholesome, positive, grounded in our faith. Together, we can accomplish our goal of raising better Muslims, better neighbors, and better citizens. Please donate generously. It's an investment in our future. But to finish, let me tell you, there are new scripts of my new mission. And it is something that I enjoy talking about. My new mission is space. Houston, we do not have a problem. Salam, see you soon. Me too.
Welcome back. This is What's Up Doc on Muslim Network TV, and I'm your host, Dr. Aalia Al-Barwani. Before the break, we were talking about grief and what is grief, the process of grief. And joining us in that discussion is Dr. Jason Branch. So, Dr. Branch, as I said, we were just kind of talking about if grieving is kind of like there's a stop point. We kind of agreed, no, there's a process. It's individualized. Everybody goes through things differently. But there are some somewhat standard, I guess, stages of grief that's accepted as kind of the part of the process. So let's talk a little bit about those stages and define them a little bit as well for our audience.
Okay. So back in 1969, there was a Swiss-American psychiatrist by the name of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and she came up with 5 stages of grief. So I'll go through all 5, and then we'll kind of dive into each one. So the first, and these don't go in any particular order, and they can affect us at any point in time throughout the grief. So 1 is denial, 2 is anger, 3 is bargaining, 4 is depression, and 5 is acceptance. So those are the 5 stages of grief.
And sorry to interrupt you so early in this, but I find it very interesting that you say that it's in no particular order, because I feel like the common understanding is that there is an order, right? Mm-hmm. That this happens first, and this happens first. There's anger, there's denial, and then finally acceptance. And so it's funny, or not funny, but interesting that you explain and I'm sure you're going to get into detail, that there is no order.
Right. And I think that's just part of us being human. We love order. We love structure. Give me a beginning and end. Don't be random with me. Give me what I need.
Exactly. I need to know where I'm starting and where I'm ending.
Yes. So imagine how difficult that is if I'm dealing with grief and I'm not experiencing what the 5 stages say. I don't feel denial right now. I feel angry. So why am I not feeling denial? It's because of that black and white thinking sometimes that just it's not applicable to how we are as human beings.
Got it. Okay. So sorry to interrupt you. I'll let you go back to, you were explaining or defining the different stages for us.
Okay. So denial happens within grief. And that denial is the refusal to believe or accept that loss has happened. So for example, if you lost a relationship or a marriage, it's that disbelief of, I was just married yesterday. Now I'm not married. Like this doesn't connect. I don't get it. Or loss of a job. Mm-hmm. I was working and going into my office every day. And now I'm working through Zoom, trying to find jobs. I'm denying it. I'm not accepting that reality. Or the loss of someone. I can't believe this person passed away. Especially now with COVID, where I'm not able to even attend the funeral or be there, or I may put myself at risk by seeing this person in the hospital. I may deny it altogether. So I feel as though, especially in this season of 2020 and 2021 with the pandemic, a lot of times that denial can affect us more often than not, because we're not using traditional methods of how we connect with each other. Anger, for many of us, that anger, that frustration, I'm upset. I'm angry. I'm mad at the world. I'm mad at God. I'm mad at whoever. How did I lose this person? How did I lose this place that I was in my life? Everything was fine. All of a sudden, I lost this person. So I'm angry. I'm angry at society. I'm angry at politics. I'm angry at whoever I can be angry with, or angry at myself. What I could have done different or done in a different way, which brings us to bargaining. Bargaining, typically for many of us with bargaining, it's this idea that I could have done something. I could have said something. If I only had called this person or reached out or did this or did that, I could have changed it. And that bargaining is when we begin to kind of balance that control factor. I don't have any control, so bargaining is a way for me to get control. Or it could be me being upset with God. God, how could you betray me? How could you do this to me? Or if I do this, God, you'll help bring this person back or help this person live. And sometimes with bargaining, it's us making a sacrifice for ourselves, for somebody else. I'm going to stop drinking if you do this. And then God does that and you don't stop drinking. That's another conversation.
That's how are you going to renege on a bargain with God?
We're human. We're human. We do what humans do.
Yes.
So
yes.
a lot of times we'll go to that place of, oh my God, God, if you can do this, this, and this, I'll do that. Mm-hmm. So we bargain. It's just it's a human response. The next is depression. With depression, we begin to isolate. We don't want to do the normal activities we usually do. We don't want to be around people. We hibernate. We're in the dark room or in our bed. We don't want to get out of bed. We just don't want to do our normal activities. And that can be a part of grief. And the last is acceptance, where it may take time. It may take years to get to a place where I've accepted the fact that I lost this thing, this person, this job, this relationship, and I can't change what's happened. And now I'm in a place where I can begin to move forward because I've overcame that situation, even though I may still deal with grief. I've accepted the reality of the truth of what happened, that I lost this person, this relationship, or this potential job.
Wow. There is a lot to digest and parcel out there, because though each stage has so many different nuances, and tell me, does being in a certain stage, does it basically mean that you're healing, or does it have any kind of weight as to saying how well you're doing? Because I feel like a lot of the times, well, I'm in this stage now, so I'm doing okay. Do you know what I'm saying? And so you said, there's no like this happens first and this happens next, but is one better than the other? Is it better to be in the acceptance phase? Because I understand that people can switch back and forth and it's never linear.
Yes. Again, the black and white thinking keeps us in that place. Oh, I'm in the depression phase. As soon as I get out of this, I'm okay. No, that's not the case, because I can go from depression back to anger, or back to bargaining, or back to denial. So it's not linear. It's very subjective, and it goes in any way. To me, regardless of what stage you're in or what you're experiencing, is being able to accept who you are and where you are at that time. So I'm upset, I'm angry, I'm this, I'm that. Giving yourself permission to be exactly where you are and who you are. Oftentimes we get into this idea that I should be here, or I should be over it by now. And those standards come from beliefs or ideas that people may share. But the reality is we experience it in different ways, and we overcome it or work through it in different ways at different times. So again, it's not putting ourselves into this box of it has to be one way or the other, but being okay living in the gray.
Oh, I love it. Going back full circle to what you had said, in the now and not in the what ifs, and accepting as well the now, right? And that's part of it, is accepting where you are and not stressing about, am I going to go to this next or whatever? Just you're in this spot or in this stage. Something that you mentioned with respect to, I think it was the first stage that you had mentioned, denial, and kind of dealing with these different stages during COVID, during the COVID pandemic. I know that a lot of people are unable to be with their loved ones if they're in the hospital and they know that they're dying, or afterwards being able to, in some countries, and I don't know too much about what's happening here in the hospitals, being able to be with their loved ones when they die, being able to say goodbye, as people say, or or be able to bury them sometimes, even in some cases. And so how does that affect the stages of grief? How does that affect the process of grieving?
Excellent question. And because we're living in different times, it may be a feeling of, I'm not accustomed to how I have to respond to grief, or I'm not accustomed to how I have to respond to loss. To me, we're dealing with unprecedented times where we've never experienced anything like this before, where imagine, I lose a family member and I can't attend the funeral, or there is no funeral. And to me, when we're dealing with situations like this that we've never seen, never experienced, it's finding a system that works for you. So if that's writing a letter to the loved one that you lost, sharing your thoughts, your feelings, your memories, doing that, having a FaceTime call with the person who may be in the hospital, just finding ways to connect when we're just so disconnected right now. And to me, that's subjective and it depends on the person. But there are several ways. We just have to be more creative with how we connect when we're dealing with the loss, because again, those are things that's outside of our control. So I can put myself at risk by attending the funeral or going to the service. But if I'm at a high risk, then I may not want to put myself in that position. What are some things that I can do to pay my respects, to connect with the family, to be involved and engaged, even if I'm doing it from afar?
Love that. Love those ideas and suggestions, Dr. Branch. Another term that I hear is closure, finding closure. And for a lot of people, like you mentioned, attending the funeral provides closure. Is closure, I feel like it's just a made up construct. It's just, you know what I mean? Like we make these things up to make ourselves feel better. But
I would agree. I would agree. I would agree.
Is there such a thing as closure?
So to me, yes, there's such thing as a closure.
Okay.
However, closure comes from the individual who needs closure. So I don't need to go to anybody to get closure. I have to give myself closure. So sometimes, especially if you think about relationships, past relationships, or lost relationships, I need that person to do A, B, and C so I can close that chapter.
I've heard that so often. Absolutely. I just need to ask him this one question. I just need to ask her, why did she do that to me so that I can have closure?
No, that is a waste of time and it does not work. Closure comes from self. Closure comes from self. And to me, closure, number one, is the acceptance of that loss. I got into a place where I accept it. I'm okay. What happened, happened. I learned from it. I grew from it. I've changed from it. I'm a different person. I will not make those mistakes again, whatever the case may be. And you accepted the reality of what took place. Closure is this idea that this person can give me something to bring me at peace. Peace doesn't come from external. It comes from internal. So imagine if a person passed away. Do I ask them, hey, wake back up so we can talk so I can close this case? No, I have to do the work on my own to bring closure to a loss. The same rules apply when it comes to dating, relationships, and a job. I don't go back to the job and ask my boss, hey, can we talk about why you let me go? No, I need to do my work so that I can be okay. And please believe, I've been fired. I'm sorry. I resigned several times. From jobs.
I resigned as well.
So I had to find closure for myself because the answers that we're looking for, a lot of times we'll never get them. We'll never get them. So therefore, let me create what works for me to move through and move on from that situation.
Absolutely. All of that is resonating so well with me, Dr. Branch. I mean, as someone who has resigned, I agree. I went through bargaining, I went through denial, I went through anger, and then I was just like, you know what? It's fine. It's all good.
Yes,
it's all good. I will be fine.
Yes.
And because I really did, I wanted to go back and be like, well, I mean, I know you don't have the budget for me right now, but maybe we can work something out, and I was just like, you know what? I'm not, or trying to find out why, or is it really because of the budget? It's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. This is where you are now.
Exactly.
Let's figure out how to move forward.
Exactly. And that goes back to being present in the here and now.
Exactly.
Because I can what if the relationship, the job, I can what if it to my detriment.
Exactly.
And the what is I'm no longer employed at such and such, which means there's an opportunity for me to be employed at a new place or create my own.
Or create your own, which is even better. Exactly. Yeah. I love this, Dr. Branch. Okay. I can't believe it's time for another commercial already. So You're watching What's Up Doc on Muslim Network TV, and we'll be back after this short break.
My wife, she's a professor at the University of Cincinnati, who's Catholic, and by her watching and listening to our 3-year-old son watch Adam's World, she ended up taking Kalima Shahada. She embraced Islam because she learned so much about Islam and the other prophets. It really affected our life in a great way, and because of Sound Vision and Adam's World, we're Muslims.
I took my Shahada 15 years ago, and I actually am from a rural part of Ohio. And so I found the catalog for Sound Vision, and I ordered the tapes and the CDs and the books, and I used those, and especially for my little daughter, that's how we basically learned our Islam, and Islam entered our hearts through the wonderful works of Sound Vision.
Okay, assalamu alaikum, brother. I just want you to know that I love the Sound Vision website, that a lot of times when I'm looking for information, especially as it relates to homelessness, domestic violence, and women issues, I go to that website, and then I see what you've written, and then I copy and paste it, and spread the word, because the wisdom is there, so I can't do any better than what Sound Vision has already done.
Sound Vision is our survival guide. It is the organization that provides skills for Muslims how to survive and thrive in this community here in the U.S.
Assalamu alaikum, my name is Anam, I'm in 11th grade, and I grew up with Adam's World, and what it taught me was unity, respect, and love for the Muslim Ummah.
Adam's World is the greatest show ever made. Take me to the Kaaba, man. I love that puppet.
Assalamu alaikum!
Open up your eyes.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, it's your brother Zain Bika from South Africa. One of the first educational programs ever produced for Muslim children was the ever popular Adam's World series. The colorful and comical Muslim puppet stole the heart of a generation. Sound Vision will be releasing brand new episodes of Adam's World with the launch of a Adam's World app. Subscribers will enjoy new Adam's World episodes as they are released, as well as all the classic episodes of Adam's World. So visit adamsworldapp.com now to learn more, subscribe, and enjoy new adventures of Adam and his friends. And let's keep helping tomorrow's Muslims today. Assalamu alaikum.
Adam's World. Believe me, there's a lot to see. Bismillah. Let's explore.
Welcome back to What's Up, Doc on Muslim Network TV. Today we're joined by Dr. Jason Branch, and we are talking about grieving and how to cope and deal with grieving. Before the break, Dr. Branch, we were talking about the different stages of grief. And I think one of the biggest take-home points is to just accept the stage you're in, and that grieving is not linear. There's something I saw online, which was, it was a picture of like a straight line, and it said, this is what people think grief is. And then it was a picture of like basically a ball of yarn, like just a knotted ball of yarn. And it says, this is what grief actually is. It's not straightforward. You can be in any stage at any period of time, years later, months later, after the loss of a relationship, a loved one, etc. And so let's switch gears a little bit and talk about grieving in children, because a lot of children are, I don't know, I feel like honestly, as someone who also sees kids, are being neglected. And what I mean by that is we're not thinking too much about their emotional state. We're worried about, well, I have to be at home now and be the teacher and work from home, etc. But I don't think we take enough time to think about how these changes are impacting children. And when adults lose a loved one, or family members, are we looking and checking in on our kids as well? And so let's talk about grief in children. Does it happen in the same way that we have just been talking about for this episode? What are some things to keep in mind when talking to our kids about grief?
Yes, it affects children just like it affects adults, because it affects children. So
exactly.
There may be this idea, they're so young and they're, impressionable and developing, they may not deal with it. But yes, children do deal with grief as well. Some of the losses children could have could be as simple as a toy, a play toy, a pet, the family pet, the goldfish. It could be the loss of, we're not eating certain foods anymore. It could be numerous things. And their grief is based off of their developmental stages. So developmentally, it depends on the age. Some developmentally may not have a concept of the loss. For those who may be more developmentally or a little older, they can understand losing something. So with children, to me, it's accepting whatever stage that they're in and being present with them and for them. That means allowing your child to cry, to grieve, to be upset, to hurt, to share their thoughts, their feelings, and accepting them for what they bring to the table. My belief is that oftentimes, even for us as adults, when it comes to grief, we have certain feelings and beliefs about it based off of what our parents did to us when we were children and we lost something. So sometimes for parents, we're not thinking about how this affects our child when it comes to providing that support and assistance for them. And that can affect them later on in their lives, which affects a lot of adults when it comes to grief.
Wow, that's really important. Just like other things in the development of our children that affect them later on in life, this is equally as important. How would you, I know it's probably a whole different topic and a different episode, but briefly, how would you recommend parents address this with their children? Maybe some key words to use or some ideas. Should they be just getting them counseling, what does that conversation look like?
Excellent question. To me, number one is listen. As a parent, listen. You got two ears and one mouth, which means twice as much as you talk. So for parents, listen. It requires nothing to listen. And children, they have a lot to talk about. That's what they want to do, is talk. Allow them to talk. So listening, to me, is one of the first things that you can do. And next to listening is have a conversation. Talk about it. Make it real. It's not made up. It's not fake. This really happened. Let's talk about it. In addition, as parents, you got to make sure you're okay to have this conversation. Yes. So how can I talk to my child about the loss if I'm breaking down, slobbering and snotting and everything else for my kid? Well, I'm teaching healthy coping skills of, let me make sure I'm okay before I have this conversation with my child.
And it's back to what we talked about in our previous episode, which is you cannot pour from an empty cup. You have to fill yourself up first. Yes. Check in with yourself first.
If I check in with me, I'm okay. I'm together. Let me make sure my child is okay.
Exactly.
Or, after we have that conversation, we may grieve together. Parent and a child, and then I can talk about it. Mommy's crying because of this, daddy's crying because of that, and making it normal, because it is. but we don't talk about it. And imagine for a child, if they're shunned for expressing their feelings and emotions, that can affect them as adults as well.
I really appreciate you sharing that, making it normal, because it is a normal process. It's what the body need, we need emotionally and mentally to be okay to process what happened.
Yes.
So I love that. I love that. That brings me to something that I hear a lot, which are the craziest things that people say when someone is grieving.
Yeah.
And, just very unhelpful things that maybe loved ones with good intentions may be saying to someone who might be grieving. So let's talk about that a little bit. How do we support someone who is going through the grieving process? What should we not ever say? And what are some things that we should probably say,
Okay, so one of the key things, what not to say is, is at least he or she lived a long life. Many people die young.
Yes.
He or she is in a better place.
Yes.
We don't know that. She brought this on herself. He brought it on himself. He should have been out without the mask on. Whatever your political views, affiliation, keep them to yourself, because they're irrelevant when it comes to a loss.
Exactly.
And to me, some of the best things to say, number one, is ask. Ask, what do they need? What can I do? How can I help? And to me, when it comes to having that conversation about grief, less is more. If you don't know what to say nothing. Offer a hug, offer a handshake, offer a tissue, offer your time, offer a listening ear. Again, 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen, allow this person to share whatever they're dealing with, what they're experiencing. So if there's, I don't know what to say or how to say it, what's simple is, I'm sorry for your loss, period. You don't have to go into this whole spiel, this whole shit. You don't have to do that. I'm sorry for your loss. That's me showing empathy. I wish I had the words to say, but I don't. But I care. And
so acknowledging that you have no words, that's also powerful.
Yes. Talking about favorite memories with this person. Tell me about this person. I don't know. What's the legacy? What they left? What are some happy memories? What are some happy moments? Give a hug instead of saying something. Offer the physical touch, just being there, just being next to them, holding their hand, supporting them, and seeing what they need instead of what I think this person may need.
Exactly. And asking, really.
Yes.
Saying, how can I help you through this?
Yes.
I feel like that is very powerful, because instead of, just like you said, giving something that maybe the person who's grieving doesn't actually want, as opposed to asking them, what do you need? How can I be there for you?
Yes.
And I feel that those few words are very powerful, because it gives the person grieving the power to also then, allow this person to help them through the process if they are ready for that, or to tell them what they need in that moment and in that stage.
Yes. And you're able to meet that person's needs based off of what they need, not what you think they need.
Exactly.
For some people, we're not huggers. So why am I offering a hug to somebody who doesn't hug? They don't want to hug.
Exactly.
We could have another funeral happen if you hug me. I'm not trying to be.
Oh, gosh. You got to watch out.
I'm just saying, we got to be ready for anything. So if the easiest way to help that is to ask, what is it that you need? What is it that I can do? And giving that person space and time to share with you what they need or what they want.
Absolutely. Those are such amazing gems. I love all of that, because I feel like a lot of us don't know what to say. And again, well-intentioned, but we end up saying things that may make things worse for other people. The thing that I find difficult to hear when grieving is, you had mentioned this earlier, is just get over it, or this is not good for you to talk about him or her so much. And I disagree. I think that in talking and celebrating this person, if it's, a loss of a person or a relationship, I think that is part of the healing process, being able to talk about this person that they're grieving, or this thing that they're grieving.
I would agree 100%. And oftentimes we don't have permission to grieve, to work through whatever we're dealing with. And I want to share with all of the viewers that you do have permission. Number one, you give yourself permission to grieve any way that you want. So if you want to cry, if you want to write, if you want to overeat, if you want to overdrink, whatever you choose to do it and be okay with that, because this is how you manage. one of the healthiest ways of managing the grief is what you just mentioned, doctor, is to talk about the memories, talk about the great things that happened, talk about the person. Yes, they may have passed as far as their body, but the legacy and the memory is still alive, and it will stay alive as long as you're willing to talk about it. And for some people, it's too uncomfortable, it's too scary. I don't like it. I don't want to deal with it. That's fine too. It's finding a balance in what works for you. So to me, again, it could be the letter writing. I'm writing a letter to this person who passed. I'm writing my thoughts, my feelings, or I'm shedding tears. And for me, just a little self-disclosure, I had a really close cousin who passed away a couple of years ago, and I celebrate his life. So there's certain music playlists I listen to, or certain sports teams I may watch now because of him. And to me, that's keeping his legacy and memory alive. And that's how I mourn from that loss. But I've accepted it. And for me, that's being in the here and now. So find ways to celebrate that loss because it's a part of our life. So that's a loss of relationship, loss of a job, loss of a person. Find a way to celebrate it.
Absolutely. And I am sorry for your loss.
Thank you. Thank you. I see you picked up really quickly. Well, listen, y'all noticed she said, I'm sorry for your loss, and she said nothing else.
A quick study.
I see. Listen, tune in. Do y'all see this? We're learning and we're using the information. And I felt heard. I felt accepted. I felt supported.
Absolutely.
And this is in real time. We didn't practice this.
We did not practice this at all. And for me, as someone who does listen often, that's part of our jobs, right? As clinicians, that still sometimes silence does feel awkward. And it's not as awkward as we think in our minds.
Yes.
And I think that's something I have to also remind myself is just silence is not bad. I think that silence can be therapeutic, it can be healing, it can be necessary. So that's really something important for our audience. I want to share with our audience as well.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. You on point today. I would agree. The silence piece is more uncomfortable for the person.
Yes.
And for me, even though you were practicing some silence, I felt all of that energy. I felt the love. I felt the support, even in silence. So I agree with you. A lot of times we have to practice silence a little more often. And because we're so nervous talking about loss or death, that's when we start talking a lot more than that's necessary.
Exactly. I hate to say this, but we are going to have to wrap up pretty soon. But before we do that, I want to make sure that if we have people in our audience who are hurting, who are suffering, who are grieving, what are some things or some resources for them? Does everyone who goes through the grieving process, should they be seeking counseling at what point? And what are some resources for our audience if they do choose that?
So for me, again, as a licensed clinician, therapy is my number one resource. Go to therapy. Even if you're dealing with grief, loss, whatever it is, try therapy. And therapy gives you an opportunity to talk about grief, talk about loss, talk about your experience. And being able to talk about your experience allows you to heal through it. When we keep it to ourselves and we just hold on to it, eventually it's going to come out, and it may come out in unhealthy ways. To me, counseling gives you an opportunity to talk about these things, to bring this out in a healthy way. So psychologytoday.com is one of the easiest ways to find a clinician that's in your area. Talkspace and BetterHelp is another. This is online teletherapy that's offered. Griefcounselor.org is another resource that you can connect. They have support groups that may be available. You may just want to share your experience with other people who may be dealing with loss. One of the best websites overall is grieving.com. Grieving.com has a plethora of information about grief, about loss, and finding resources and support. So therapy, support groups, allowing yourself to grieve, connecting with friends, connecting with family, talking about legacy, talk about healing, working through it. It's numerous things that you can do to work through and to allow yourself that process of grief and mourning, representing that loss from, like I mentioned before, from the inside out. So there's tons of information out there. Find what works for you.
I love that. Thank you so much, Dr. Branch. And just to be clear, you said grieving.com or grieving.org?
Grieving.com.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Branch. We will have to have you back for sure. I mean, I feel like we have to just keep on a regular basis have you in to help us with our mental health. But I love this episode. I love that we were able to share so much useful information with our audience today. And we thank you for your time and your experience. And we wish you every success in your career, Dr. Branch.
Thank you so much. And look forward to next episode. I'll be back.
I'm already planning it.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on another episode of What's Up, Doc. Today, we had another amazing episode with Dr. Branch talking about grieving and what that means and how we go through that process of grieving. If you'd like to watch other episodes of What's Up, Doc, you can go to our YouTube page at youtube.com/Muslim Network TV and on Muslim Network TV website. As I mentioned earlier, it's muslimnetwork.tv. I'm your host, Dr. Aalia Al-Barwani, and I'll see you next time on another episode of What's Up, Doc.